Ladies and gentlemen, part of my YouTube channel is sharing my own personal games with all of you. Now, oftentimes that is through my games in my Grandmaster Norm tournament, something like a Win at Chess episode. But today we are taking a look at 4 Blitz games that took place a couple of weeks ago in a Title Tuesday tournament where I got a chance to play some extremely strong players, including the final game in this video, when I played against a world champion contender in the late 20th century, whose name is KAMSKY. We're going to take a look at all of these games, and you're going to enjoy the video. And that's going to be that's going to be the whole thing. So our journey begins in the middle of Title Tuesday. This is the first of 4 games, and my opponent for this game is V. Pranav. Now, V. Pranav actually was in a recent video of mine. Poor guy's getting posterized, even though he's won more games against me than I've won against him. But to be honest, this is where my really strong blitz run actually began. It began in this round of this Title Tuesday a couple weeks ago. And I went for a Nimso Indian against V. Pranav. Now, you know, Knight F3 is a bit more of a flexible move. This move sort of commits people to playing Bishop B4. And the tricky thing about allowing the Nimso in online games is that if you play the lines you're actually intending to play over the board, the Nimso is such a forcing opening with black that black can just basically equalize effortlessly. I've been playing the same-ish variation, really just making black take immediately before I commit any of my structure. I play this twice in this video, and after castles is actually not is not the kind of most principled thing. Like C5 normally is what black plays, and I like to play F3 and try to build a fat center with E4. So that's exactly what we get. Now there is a little bit of a drawback of committing the king so early, and it's the fact that I can actually like create some attack on you. It's actually, believe it or not, maybe even better to keep the king in the middle of the board, as we're discovering with the same-ish. But d6, and very quickly black goes for this sort of confrontational structure. Black is going to try to create counterplay on my really bad c4 pawn, and in the meantime, I'm going to try to do something over here. I'm keeping an eye on whether or not black plays the move e5 and closes the structure. Pranav played bishop to a6. I played knight g3, anticipating this and queen e2, which is actually exactly what happened. And then here, some people like to play like this against me. This is really not that scary. I like to just play a4. Or, for example, you can even allow this to happen, and you can lose your pawn, but you're so quick with your center counterplay that losing the c4 pawn, but opening up potentially 4 attacking pieces on the king, when in a kind of a funny way everybody's abandoned the king, right? That would lead white to a good position. But anyway, he played rook c8. And obviously the point here is to take on d4, and when I saw this coming, I decided to keep the center closed, and I thought we did a pretty decent job here. He played knight d7. Knight d7 is a very obvious move. Well, that would be illegal, but he wants to come here, right? So now it's very clear that white needs to commit yet another pawn forward, but this is why I like this for white. You just get such a big center, and, you know, I'm sorry I'm weight shaming the center, but it's so big. It's thick, with 3 C's. 3, no Ks. So cd5, cd5, and he takes here. And normally, if white can undouble the pawns, like this is a big win for the opening. Now white is a move away from just getting a great position. Like, just so you understand, this is beautiful for white. White completely dominates the center. The knight on a5 has no purpose in life whatsoever. It's going to go to a coding boot camp and try to become a software engineer because it really has no other career options. You see, that's why my opponent attacked me twice and actually played c4 to have a transfer point through c5. Now, at this point, I realized he's going to get a knight to d3. So, for example, when I move my queen out of the way, one of these knights is going to get to d3. And actually, that looks really unpleasant for white. But I was like, you know what? When he played this, I'm going to get my bishop to d4. I also have some good things going on for me in this position. Castles knight d3, and we kind of get to a spot where we're both happy, which is really bad, because no one should be happy when they play chess. So he plays g6, and this move prevents me from playing my knight forward. Now, of course, white has one and only one game plan in this position, and that's to attack this king. Somehow, I mean, you're going to play maybe f5, maybe you're going to bring a few pieces over first. There's a very interesting tactical idea to play knight to f5, which is beautiful. Once you have to bring your rook, right? Once you bring your rook, that's mate. I mean, that is a mate because this bishop is so strong, you sack the queen, you get mated. Rook f3 is a beautiful rook lift idea to then play knight to f5. But I played queen e2 to rotate my queen over and queen f3. Just slow improvement of my position before committing the pawn to f5. In hindsight, I should have anticipated that the queen was coming here, and a rook up and over would have been better, but you know, I did it like this. And then, I was just going to slowly improve things. And then here he played f5. I'm like, wait a minute, what is he doing? Why is he attacking? His king is the weak king, right? So when he plays f5, part of me is like, well, obviously I should take and then play something like rook e2. And I mean, once you commit so many pawns forward, look at all these squares, right? They're all weak. They've all kind of been abandoned, whereas my king is like extremely solid because I haven't moved the pawns in front of my king. I decided to go with rook e2 before taking on f5. I mean, it was a split-second decision. He took, but the weaknesses still remain. I mean, black is in like some trouble here because you kind of put all your pieces out and you can't figure out what's next. Like, none of the pieces have any forward movement. It's a very natural human emotion to try to make progress in a position rather than do nothing. So he tries to make progress and he blunders. And this is like a series of errors here. Like, so I realize here that I can utilize that really weakened square. And this is a very common idea when there's rooks that stare at each other on a file. Rather than one of us taking and surrendering the file to the other, I move my rook up to a point where if he takes it, I greatly improve my position. This pawn slides past this pawn, gives a little elbow bump, that pawn flops like Marcus Smart, and then e7 is coming in, and we're gonna attack, and I mean, right, like, this is game over. So he tries to go for counterplay. I play h3, I don't hang mate in 1, and knight h6. And here, white can continue to slowly improve, but I saw a tactical sequence. I can play bishop f6. Now, how did I see bishop f6? Well, naturally, you're looking at moves like taking something, but then there's this. He also has a capture. And so I decided, well, how do I create maximum danger? Oh, I can attack his queen. If he takes, I go here. That's easy. And if he takes, I win a queen. That obviously should be good for me. And I put my knight on e4. And then here I had to calculate one more thing. Rook f4 now doesn't work because I have something known as X-ray defense. Knight f6 check. What's worth more than a queen? You, and also the enemy king, right? So I now threaten both rooks. So what I would do is I would take this rook first, and then I would X-ray, my queen defends the knight, and now I have another skewer. And so we're just going to be up a rook for a knight. So rather than doing that, Pranav decided to keep the rooks on. The problem now is that he loses 2 pawns. And once you lose the queen and the 2 pawns, you can create some counterplay, but I'm just going to push. And as long as I don't hang any sort of discovery, I'm going to be in good shape. So I played queen g4. I played rook takes f5. And he resigned. And this was off to a great start. I mean, this guy's 3,000. This was my highest blitz win ever. And we played a pretty like smooth sailing game. In the very next game, I was paired against Benjamin Bach. Now, some of you might have seen this clip. There's all these channels on YouTube now that just kind of try to get like views and some clout, just like clipping things in the chess world and putting them up. And they say also, Grandmaster rage quits. Yeah, I mean, I think Benjamin didn't have like a wonderful title Tuesday, so he stopped playing after this game. So then there was this clip uploaded like rage quits or whatever. Yeah, I mean, this time I played the Nimso from the other side, and he played queen c2, and my favorite line to play against queen c2 is actually the line we got in this game, which is d5 right away. I mean, there's a lot of lines in queen c2. It's the most solid and annoying option. There's b6, which is really confrontational. There's castles, which after e4 is probably just a forced draw. After like d5, e5, knight e4, I mean, it's all sorts of crazy theory here. Black tries to explode the center. I play d5, and the idea is this, to play c5. There's also just very solid options like castles and dc4, but black sacks a pawn and actually sacks a second pawn. Like, I want him to take on g7. No one has ever played queen g7 against me. Ben played knight f3, and I castled. I think castles is mildly inaccurate. I think maybe e5 is completely okay. There's not a lot of theory here, so I'm just trying to build my experience. Knight e8 is fine, and here he played b4. I think b4 is okay, but I think something else is better. I think white should play rook d1 here. But he played b4, and I was kind of on my own, and I was like, all right, do I build this, or do I try to kind of like get confrontational on the queen side? I thought b4 was actually a little bit weakening, and I could play a5. Yeah, no, the engine is like, build your center. Like build your connect 4, build this. And actually, yeah, that looks pretty good. But I was like, no, we're going to create counterplay because I'm really smart. I'm going to threaten knight f5. But here he played a really nice move. He played e4. And actually, en passant here just lands me in a garbage position because he gets back. His structure is really good. He has 2 bishops and he has an extra pawn and he's a GM. I mean, he has a lot of bonuses going for him in this position. I mean, I'm a pretty good-looking guy, but that's not really a chess bonus. So I decide to play king h8 to threaten the bishop. Now, after king h8, if he just retreats back to f4, my plan was to play something like f6, e5 now, or knight g6, or even f5. I thought about playing f5 and trying to close up the structure. The engine thinks that if white retreats, it's like +3. It hates black's position. But in blitz, it's not always so easy to just, very quickly look at this position and say, oh, well, actually, this is good for black. What is white even supposed to play here? Oh, white is supposed to play e5 himself. So if and only if white plays e5 himself, white is going to get, a really good position. Which is also, I thought weird because I could get counterplay, but okay, engine knows better than human. But he played rook d1, and I was like, what? So what he had calculated was that I take his bishop, and then he takes, and then I have to block, and he gets a really strong initiative. Knight e5, he's a really annoying position. He's just crushing me. But what he totally, forgot is I can trade queens. And, he reacted on stream to it, and I just assumed that you don't play into this whatsoever if I can play queen c7. So now my nerves are kicking in because I'm like, oh my god, I'm beating a second really strong player in a row. Admittedly, I have a piece for 2 pawns, so it's... And I don't have a lot of movement, right? I can't move that many pieces. And white is still better. That's actually kind of crazy. If apparently white maintains advantage after e5, because my position sucks so bad, I just can't move anything. If I try to break out with f6, apparently white just ignores it. White can play g3, and I'm only helping my opponent make an even stronger structural bind on me. But one mistake follows another. And so he plays bishop e2, and now I find a very nice tactical shot to get out of this bad position, which is e5 myself. That is called a clearance sacrifice. And now I open up 2 pieces with this move. He takes, I go here, and now we've won the c5 pawn. And even though we still have 5 pawns versus 7, now all my pieces come alive. So bishop e6, that 1 pawn was holding me back, right? Sometimes you got to sacrifice one person in your life. Not actually. That's not what I'm advocating for. But, cut him out, and that'll make you a more fulfilled and better person. Okay? Let's go to an ad break. I don't actually know. Did YouTube put an ad there? I have no idea. Sometimes they do. That's, beyond me. Anyway, f3. Bishop 2e6. And now king f2, knight g6. I'm just trying to trade pieces, and I'm helping myself undouble. And I'm playing rook c8. And throughout this game, I also have a 1-minute time advantage, which is pretty rare. So the next plan of action is all right, he's trying to create something. Because, he's in a worse position, but he's got a good active rooks. So I have to find a way to trade pieces, right? So I play f6. So first we're going to trade some pawns off, and we're going to open up his situation over here. And I play king e7. My idea with king e7, I want to get both rooks off. If I get bishop, knight versus bishop, I don't care how good Benjamin Bach is at chess, he's getting clapped. The problem is that he backs up, and now if I continue with my plan of rook d8, he will play bishop d5. So he's gonna block the rook trade, but he's gonna keep the rooks on the board. So g3, bishop d5. And let's also not forget, he's speeding up, I'm slowing down. Why? I'm terrified. I'm not gonna lie. I'm nervous. I'm like, oh my god, don't screw this up. I'm not thinking win, win, win. I'm thinking don't screw this up, which is obviously not the right mentality to have. And hopefully one day it goes away, but that's just how it is. I'm not gonna lie. When you're playing someone 400 points higher rated than you, in this case, not that high, but you get nervous when you get a good position. So I'm like, all right, rook e8. Now you would say, Levy, why didn't you just trade rooks? Yeah, good point. I didn't like the fact that I don't get a second rook trade. So for example, if I play knight e6 here, I guess I do get a second rook trade. I guess I can play rook d8. But by the way, this is not always a winning endgame. It's actually kind of insane, but if white's king gets active, this is not even winning anymore. So there's moments that in a knight endgame, even though you're up the knight, you got to be really careful. And so as time ticked lower, I was able to win the c4 pawn, and now I'm totally winning. And my man trapped his own rook, so I'm like, oh, we're in the clear. Then here comes king e4, and here comes comes g4. I'm like, oh god, because f5 is coming, right? And if f5 is coming, that's a problem. So I decide to play rook e7, f5, takes, and knight d4. And he's still trapped, but I'm like, oh, might not. Well, I could take on f5, but now I don't know what to do. And here I have like 3 seconds, like 4. We both have like 5 seconds on the clock. Like, I don't know what to move. I can't move this rook anywhere because then he just takes. If I move my knight, then he takes this. And I mean, what are we going to do? Shuffle back and forth? Now, what you do in a situation like this is maybe you repeat moves once, but you don't change anything. Like, you let your opponent self-destruct. It's just Zugzwang. White has no moves. I can just basically move back and forth until he just completely has no moves left. It's actually kind of interesting. And obviously, like, if he played h4, I should probably take it. And there's also moments that I can, like, move the h-pawn myself, for example. And, he has no moves. I mean, he just literally can't move anything. But obviously, that's not how the game ends. The game ends with me, in a panic, accidentally losing my h6 pawn. Oh my god. Now I'm going to c2 to get this. And now what he has to do with 3 seconds on the clock is realize he has to go back and go for my a-pawn. Almost unseeable if you have like 3 seconds, unless you're like top 5 blitz player in the world. Instead, you're always going to go forward. Humans want to go forward and go forward again. And he tried to trade off the pieces, but what he forgot to realize, he didn't realize that I have knight b5. My knight can actually just kick out the wall of the house. You can't take it because this pawn goes, and we win this game by making an unbreakable little fortress here. He can't go for the pawn, so I walk over, and a little bit later in this position, he resigned. A bit of a bluff in the opening for sure, but sometimes that's how it goes, I would have loved to tell you I won the same way I won the last game, just the clean, smooth sailing in the opening, but that's what you're going to see in the next few games. Very interesting, imbalanced chess, and 2-0. 2-0. So after this, I got paired against Rasmus Swane from Germany. Now, I have a horrible record against the Olympic team of Germany. Like, it's so bad. I've lost to Daniel Friedman, who I believe is a German Grandmaster, over the board. I've lost to Georg Meyer so many times. I've lost to Dimitri Kollars so many times, including, I think, in this title Tuesday, in, like, the 3rd round. I've lost to Blue Bomb. I mean, I just can't beat the Germans. It's unbelievable. But here I am playing Rasmus Swane, who I've never played before, German GM. And he plays the Magnus QGD. This is known as the Magnus QGD because it's the Queen's Gambit declined with a6. It was never known that, but Magnus played it 3 times and now he owns it. It's just one of those things, If the world champion touches it or so much as looks at it, it becomes the Magnus QGD. That's just how it goes. So, a6. Now, the best way to play here with white, in my opinion, is to trade and play bishop to g5. Just play normal moves and basically just leave a6. Like, it's just a normal Queen's Gambit declined. It's a very solid system. What white should do is trade the dark squared bishop. So, play something like h3, and then if black plays something like castles, like rook c1 and bishop f4. This is the structure white wants, because this bishop is terrible. And it's been completely negated by this, and this diagonal has been blocked. Also, if you can hear the howling wind outside, please disregard. If you can't, I'm not losing my mind. So I actually made an accuracy in this game. I allowed my opponent to get this battery, which actually prevents me from playing this bishop f4 trade. So I would have to kind of come around like this. And I thought I was going to get really edgy in this game. I was feeling really good. I'm coming off 2 big games, and I imbalanced the game immediately. I went knight e2 and then played this. And I was like, we're trading bishops, you're taking my knight and opening up my file, and then I'm going to attack you. And that's actually exactly what happened. So we got to this position, and I'm like, this is great. This is everything I want. Everything is going my way in this tournament. I'm going to create an attack over here. We're also going to play on the queen side. And maybe in the future we'll play for e4, but I understand the position is balanced, obviously. So opponent goes b5. Now, b5 is a massive commitment, okay? Massive. I'm talking 30-year mortgage. Like, now, black can't really get queenside play. The only way you're going to do that is to weaken d5 and also weaken this diagonal. So I said, you know what? If he wants to come to me, God bless him, he can come to me, and he did. And he did. And now he's losing. He's losing because after dc5, he actually has to go back. Why? Because if he plays knight takes c5, I have this. And he's paralyzed. He has no moves. This bishop move stops both rook c8 and knight d7. If he plays knight b7, I take his queen, and then I take his rook. So he plays queen e7. I'm like, oh my God, I'm beating a third really strong 29, 28, 3,000 rated player in a row. So what do? We got to take the knight. Let's, step one, take the knight. He takes with the queen. Now we play knight f4, rook d8, and I play queen b4, queen e7. And so here I calculate, right? So I calculate the fact that I can centralize my queen. And what I calculated was queen d4, rook c5, rook c5, rook takes c5, and b4. Queen d4 pressures this and this, right? So he can't leave with his queen because I take the knight. And he's pinned. And I calculated all that, and I said, oh my gosh, at the end I have b4, removing the guard of this. I'm winning. And that's exactly what I went for, right? Obviously. And then I took on d5, and I thought, I'm a pawn up, clean pawn up. Now we just have to try to win this rook endgame. The problem is, I had no time. And I couldn't come up with actually a winning plan. This endgame went on for like 40 more moves. I really worked super hard. We traded some pawns. I had the 3-on-2. And, you know, I tried to make as much progress as possible. I think in hindsight, what I did incorrectly, first of all, trading pawns a little bit too quickly on the queen side. So, for example, maybe something like a3, and just don't let the rook move rather than allowing the queen side pawns to come off. And just slowly improving on this side. Maybe at some point, I can walk my king to the queen side as well. And later on, even with the trade of the queen side pawns, I committed my h-pawn a little bit too early. Maybe what I should have done is like h4 here and try to walk toward the middle a bit more and have a situation where, for example, something like this. My rook can guard my h-pawn. I can force the king back and something like this. I committed too early and I made a draw. And it turns out I was winning. Like, not just up a pawn in a rook endgame. It turns out that when I played queen d4, this move was absolutely genius. Because after rook takes c5, white to play and win, folks. Pause the video. I have an absolutely amazing move, which if I hadn't gone into this and immediately fired off all the moves thinking that I outcalculated my opponent, I would have seen this move. We both missed it. He wouldn't have played rook c5 if he saw this. Knight takes d5. Absolutely amazing move. It's like a ghost defense of this pawn. If he takes with the knight, it's mate. And if he takes with the rook, it's this. And the game is over. Knight d5 is game over because I take on f6 check next move, and that's it. And then I take the rook. So I take everything. I get everybody. It's hard. I mean, black loses every piece in this. It's crazy. Knight d5. Could have been 3 wins in a row. I had no idea. Absolutely no idea. You know, with low time, I wasn't able to convert that endgame so well. But another, like, very, very, very clean, nice game. And that takes us to our to our last game. I put a timestamp on the video player, so if you skipped ahead to this, this is one of the, like, strongest players in history. KAMSKY, if you don't know who he is, G-A-T-A KAMSKY, K-A-M-S-K-Y, was a competitor for the World Championship. Like, this dude made it to play Anatoly Karpov to qualify to play, like, for all the marbles. I mean, this guy was unbelievable. He retired for 8 years between 1996 and 2004, came back, still kicking ass. And his name is Tigr v Shlyapie, which is Tiger in the Hat, which is, that's a cool name. So, this game, we play a Nimso, and I go for the same line, but he plays c6. Now, c6 is a weird move. It's a weird move because, you know, why wouldn't you play d5, right? And then c6. And I actually mixed up my lines here, believe it or not. So I played f3 to play e4, and there's a variation where white plays queen c2 in this position, like sacrificing an early pawn and playing queen c2. And basically the point is, you actually kind of want this. You want like a gambit style. You want very active bishops, just for the cost of 1 pawn, because black's own pawns restrict the knight and the bishop. We saw this in my game against Benjamin Bach. It turns out that I'm just supposed to take. I'm just supposed to take back, because there's queen g4, and then that's a fork. Okay, I made a mistake. But Gata was playing super fast. He was terrifying me. He played queen a5, and then he played this move. And I'm like, wait a minute. I can't take because there is a fork, but I also don't want to play passively. Like, what am I, bishop b2? I'm like, no, Gata, come take my pawn again. He said, all right, you bozo, you're down 2 pawns. And I thought I was trapping this knight. So my original idea was to play bishop d2, and the knight gets out. We can't let that happen. So how do we prevent the knight from escaping? We just push the pawn to the square. So this knight is now trapped in jail with me. Like, I'm about to win it. The problem is that he has this move. So he throws the knight and anchor out of the position. He now can escape via the E4 square. But as we both kind of castle and do our thing here, I still have compensation for these two sacrificed pawns. Number one, I have a big space advantage. Like, my pawns are controlling some important squares. Bishop is super strong. I have more development, right? I mean, my pieces are a bit more active. This bishop is not really doing too much. Maybe you can argue I also have actual targets, like none of my pawns can really be attacked. But we are down 2 pawns. I mean, we're down 2 pawns. And I was kind of waiting to see what he was going to do with this position. I thought he was going to play knight f6 and try to really get that knight out, but that would let my knight get in, and now his bishop struggles to develop. He chose to go to the queen side, and actually the queen side play really got me hyped, because I was like, oh, now I have a target. Like, I have a new target, which is a5. And if he plays bishop b7, I mean, I'm really gonna like suffocate him. I'm gonna just put a pillow on the face of all his all his pieces. Nothing can move, right? And then I'm gonna keep marching forward. So he said, okay, knight e4. And then there's moments in chess games where you gotta part ways with what looks good in your position, because you can get something even better. And I decided to trade, even though I'm down 2 pawns, because I get this. So that trade creates weaknesses, right? Doubled e-pawns and access to the f7 square. You'll notice that's kind of one thing about beginner play, right? Like, things open up, lines, diagonals, they open up when you make trades. And I'm going here, and my bishop is so strong. Look at the power of this bishop, right? And I can always anchor that bishop with a c5 push. So I thought I was actually making great progress, but here comes bishop a6. It's not bishop b7 getting locked in, it's this. He wants my c4 pawn. So I'm like, all right, the only way we're going to survive this game is if we play super aggro. Here comes rook f7, right? Very tough position. And if this knight moves, I now get access to the e5 square. So if knight f6 gets played, which is what he played, I can always come here. And now I'm threatening to take this. And let's not forget, the rook is marching around the 7th rank. Rook's on the 7th, rook's on the 2nd rank for black, obviously. Very powerful. Like, because I can attack everything. I have immediate access to everything. It's like you accidentally let me into your VIP lounge, okay? Your really nice nightclub. It's like, no, I got access to everybody, right? So here I play rook c7. I'm going for this. He takes on c4, so very temporarily got us up 3 pawns. It would have been better to just kick my knight out right away. Get that knight out of there so I can't, I don't have any sort of defense to any squares. And he took on c4, and I played bishop e5. So I am now down 3 pawns. Yet it's barely winning for black. Like, black has to be super accurate, because just like the rook got access over here when we traded, I'm trying to trade bishop for knight and team my rook up on the h7 square. Has nothing to do with c6. Has nothing to do with c6. I want to take, get my knight in there, jump in there, just beat up everybody. Bull in a china shop. So, gotta blunders a7. Step 1, right? Because now once we get a7, we're threatening to take. That pawn's going to be a passer. This is a very bad position. So ba5, now I take, and I'm in. I've infiltrated. I'm still down 2 pawns, but one of them is about to die, and also knight f6 check is coming, and that's no joke. You can't protect f6. Rook f8 is covered by that knight as well. And, I mean, I'm down on time, obviously, but I'm like, oh my god, I'm winning again. A 4th game in a row. He plays rook f8. I take the rook. I play king f2, actually, because there's no need to take this yet, but I could have taken on a5. I didn't want to allow this pawn to get to e2. So I play king f2. He plays bishop d5, and I take. And I'm like, okay, this is going to be very hard to win because his bishop is so solid. It guards everything. He also can, like, just create, like, a fortress. Now, what is my greatest asset in this position? My h-pawn. So, with, like, 5-10 seconds on the clock, do I trade rooks? Do I push my pawn, right? He plays, so I trade rooks. He plays e3. And I'm like, okay, if I take e3, he gets g2, I still have my h-pawn. I still have my h-pawn. The engine here wants white to play king f1. Or something like king g1. King g1, even. And king g1 is a ridiculous move. Because the point is, e2, I bring my rook back. I just bring everybody back for a moment. And then what happens is, like, let's say king g6 and something like bishop c4, he just can't, he even though he's stuck guarding 2 things, I just paralyze his bishop. So I've removed his bishop from the game because it has to play defense on 2 pawns, and now it's my rook and my pawns versus the king. That's very hard to see. I'm not gonna lie. Could I have seen that? The idea is just to let the pawn survive. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe. I decided to take it and go rook d8. Here's the problem with this position. It's a fortress. Black has a pure defensive fortress here. Even though I have my h-pawn and I can push my pawn, there's nothing I can really do. So I mean, I made a couple of moves not to lose on time, but if I ever play h4, then I mean, I can't make any sort of progress. I'm not gonna get any of the pieces out. e5 actually gave me a little bit of a chance. Like I could have maybe tried to like win this pawn somehow, like king f2, but we ended up making a draw a few moves later because this is a draw. I can get the bishop, but then I lose my rook, and I'm not gonna mate him for sure. His bishop patrols enough squares, so we drew again. But I went 3 out of 4 with an over 3,000 blitz rating performance. I was winning in every game. I was also losing against Benjamin Bach, but we don't have to talk about that. Yeah, I mean, I've been having a good run. I've been balancing between 2750 and 2800. So yeah, just honestly playing at a high level. And at the time of recording this video, title Tuesdays in 75 minutes. So we go again. Appreciate you all if you made it this far in the video. And if you're watching before November 26th, 2021, we have a Black Friday sale. Every course is 40% off. That's all. See you in the next video. Get out of here.